Welcome back to Do You DADU, the podcast where we explore what's possible in your own backyard. I'm Shakiba, a lead architect with SC Design Build. For this episode, we wanted to do something a little different. Over the past several episodes, we talked about feasibility, design, construction, sustainability, unit lot subdivisions, and the financial side of owning a DADU. Today, we are bringing it all together and taking you behind the scenes of how we actually work through a DADU project, from the first conversation with a homeowner all the way through design, permitting, and construction. I'm joined by Suzanne, Marianne, and Delaney from our team. We all come into these projects with different perspectives and areas of expertise. I thought it would be fun to have a more open conversation about how those pieces come together. Suzanne, Marianne, and Delaney, thanks for joining me. Suzanne, since this episode is called How We DADU, I wanted to start with you. You actually built a DADU for yourself and your family. So before we talk about our process as a company, how did you DADU?
The decision to build the DADU wasn't the initial idea, and it seems like the most obvious solution now. But initially, I thought I'm buying a fixer, which was a great entry point into the Mercer Island community. And I had done probably half a dozen or so concepts of remodels, additions to the main residence. I realized the original home was just awkwardly oriented on the site. And so I thought, okay, let me start focusing on new construction ideas, because pound for pound, remodels tend to be more expensive than new construction homes, and you have to find that tipping point, and I found it. So it went into a new construction mode where my initial design was actually an attached accessory dwelling unit, where I would put the ADU on the lower level, have my main living space on the main level, and then build the bedrooms on an upper level. But it started to feel too big on the site. The massing was a little disproportionate with the neighborhood. Eventually, I pulled the ADU out and downhill. I'm very grateful, actually, to have a slope lot, and tucked it into the hillside. And the result became a benefit rather than a concession, because I was able to phase the construction of these two separate buildings. We lived in the original home on the property while building the DADU, and then moved into the DADU while building the main home, and took a break in between for a few months to catch my breath financially. And so that was the thought process.
One thing that is unique about SC is that we have a women-led team working across both design and construction. We are not only sitting on the architecture side, we are also dealing with budgets, permitting, job site decisions, contractors, and clients all the way through. Marianne, how do you think being a women-led design build team has shaped the way we communicate, collaborate, and move a project from design into construction?
As women, we bring a more empathetic perspective to design and construction, both in like a design perspective, but also client relationally. I think for a lot of people, construction and making these big changes in their lives it's difficult. And so we guide them in like the most graceful way. As women, I just think that representation is really important in these fields. And in a world that's been designed for men by men, I think we look at it differently in just to the tiniest details of counter heights, or how you sit in a chair, or how you experience a space, or the different vibes in a space. I think it's something that people really appreciate about us.
It's complex work, right? And it can cause a lot of stress for everyone involved if it's not managed correctly and appropriately. And I think we have strong sensitivities to what it means for our consultants, for our clients, for our subcontractors. We're in the end facilitating relationships. As women, there is a bit of a superpower that we have within that to be sure everyone plays well in the sandbox, to be sure that we're meeting their needs in an empathetic way. We haven't gotten always the cooperation because we don't look the part. Being in the field as women and not trying to be men in drag in the process, but actually own the roles that we're in and stay authentic to who we are and manage through difficult situations as best we can. It's unique to who we are as individuals, but I do think as a collaboration, it's been really fun having a women-led team along the way. And I do think it differentiates us.
Our process is very collaborative, and everyone brings a different perspective depending on the stage of the project. How do our different skill sets come together during a design construction process, individually and as a team?
I mean, I feel like my answer kind of feels in counter to that. I think when I think of kind of specialized skill sets, I think of more larger firms that feel a lot more disconnected throughout their process, where you have one team working on design, one on construction, maybe one on the permit set, and then there's so much disconnect between them at every stage that it doesn't have the same cohesiveness that I feel like our firm can bring, since we're a smaller design build firm.
Delaney, do you think we're better designers for having a hand in the construction?
I would say so, yes, because I think we approach the project with a sense of realism that a lot of times I think people are afraid about when they go to architects. They're worried that the architects are going to come at them with the pie in the sky approach, like, let's just do the biggest, coolest thing we can do in your property and not think at all about how it's actually going to impact your life, how to, spend time in your budget, how long it'll take, things like that. I think because we are a design build firm, we think about the constructive process the entire way, and it helps the whole thing come together a lot more efficiently.
I think just kind of to Delaney's point, we have a very practical approach of like how buildings come together. And when we have the experience of being on a construction site and having, a foot in the design side, they blend.
We are thinking about the budget while we are designing and not waiting until the end to find out what project costs. But at the same time, we don't want to limit the design too early, and we still want to explore good ideas and understand what really matters to the homeowner.
I love that you said, Shakiba, that we don't limit the design exploration early on, and I think it is important to be explorative and curious and creative in our schematic design phase, and then associate some pricing with it. And the magic happens when we edit back, because that's when priorities are established. And for each client, priorities are different. But I think it's not predetermined. It's sometimes you need something to react to. And that schematic design, that early exploration is very much part of it. And the high level pricing is very much part of that. Early on, the priorities start to come to light. And personally, for my project, I was hoping to go passive house, for example, not just on the main house, but also for the DADU. It stopped being financially feasible to do so for the DADU, and impractical in many ways, because I wasn't getting the envelope ratio to the volume of the building makes it difficult to achieve, as opposed to the main house, which is larger. And so for me, from a practical perspective and a cost savings perspective, I downgraded specifications for the DADU in the sense I didn't go triple glazed windows and doors. I went still with really good double glazed windows and doors, but that saved me money. There are elements of finishes, of scale, of complexity, of scope that I think once the priorities are established and once those decisions are made early on, you're moving forward fully informed of your commitment from there into the engineering, permitting, and construction of a project.
Being a design build firm, you can push and pull the budget and the design where you can like finally strike a balance of where everything is aligning perfectly on what your priorities are.
I think every project has a sweet spot.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a negotiation, right? And it's that hard lesson of life where you can't have it all. I mean, I wish that were the case that you could, but how rewarding is it to make informed decisions along the way and find that sweet spot?
Yeah. And I think one of the cool things about DADUs is that they're small. And you can maybe spend more on tile that would be maybe out of your budget range because it's a smaller space. Or you can spend more on sustainability features that you couldn't necessarily put on in a larger space. So I think there's more design opportunity, even though it's a smaller box to put it in.
Yeah, it can become a little bit more experimental, a little bit more of a design lab because of the scale, which is an advantage. That's a good point. I'm glad that personally I built the guest house before building the main house. There were details corrected along the way. I know the main house is better for having tried certain experimental aspects of the DADU, or just from a design perspective. So yeah, if you have the opportunity to phase construction and start with the smaller home before the bigger home, that is ideal.
We have talked a lot this season about code construction, sustainability, financing, and all the practical parts. But there is also something really interesting about DADUs as a new type of housing. Delaney, what are some aspects of DADUs that we are excited about?
I think architecturally, they're really fun for us as a design challenge. It's kind of like, how can you take everything that's great about a house and package it up into a little bite-sized version of it that's still, like we talked about, energy efficient, affordable, sustainable, all those things that get honestly harder when you are working with the kind of more restrictions. But that's really the exciting part for us, I think. And then I guess from an urban planning perspective as well, it's exciting to see how many new opportunities for housing there are. So much of our housing stock right now is single family residential, which is, a result of urban sprawl historically and all that. And then adding in this opportunities for DADUs, middle housing, things like that, I think it just opens up so many more possibilities for new different housing designs.
What's exciting is that such a small building can solve very different problems. They can use it as an office, as a gym, or a place for their guests. DADUs can have an impact far beyond the building itself. They can change how a family lives, how a property is used and financed, and even how a neighborhood grows over time. Marianne, where do you think the real impact of DADUs goes beyond the building itself?
There's just so many opportunities for people who are in different paths of life to have housing. So I think there's more diversity of people and of ways of life, which I think brings more culture and more community to an area that I think is necessary.
I mean, just the very fact that we've doubled the potential of two separate family units living on a single property through a DADU, which is the least dense option of middle housing options that are now coming online and being welcomed into neighborhoods that would otherwise potentially be financially inaccessible. I mean, it's amazing. And I think it definitely adds to our neighborhoods culturally and promotes diversity. It also offers more multi-generational living, which I think is very meaningful for a lot of families to have grandkids next to grandparents, for example. It becomes a more customizable asset to you, and it works with where you're at in life.
One question we hear a lot is, what does a typical DADU usually cost?
I think a general rule of thumb to follow for DADUs is that you can assume it will be between $375 to $450 per square foot. not including groundwork, taxes, soft costs like design and permitting.
Another question we hear a lot is how long does the whole DADU process take from design and permitting through construction?
For design, you can expect about 3 to 4 months. For the permitting, that's really going to depend on the jurisdiction, and it can vary pretty wildly. Anywhere from 2 to 6 months is what we typically see. And then construction will be about 9 to 12. And then there's also the option of doing the pre-approved DADU that we had talked about in an earlier episode, which will cut your permit review and potentially design phases in half.
So our last question, how we do DADU differently?
Would you agree that it's an advantage to have us as the core team involved in every step of the way? We're all at the charrette table. We're all pinning up ideas. We are all throwing trace onto designs in progress or looking over the shoulder of a budget to see where we can dial up and dial down to make it feasible. And we're all involved with our clients and our subcontractors and our consultants. It's somehow organically evolved into being an iterative process that you would think would be less efficient, but in fact makes us more streamlined because we're getting the feedback loop early on. So it's not a very prescriptive method. It's not a paint by numbers Frankenstein way of working. We're open-minded. We're evolving. We're responsive. We're kind of inspired by all our projects that come through the door, and the outcome more likely will end up being uncommon. I think we differentiate ourselves as the type of team that is open to discovery and open to a design that's outside of each of our egos in a way. Like we're not trying to create signatures on projects for the sake of our egoic satisfaction. We're genuinely in it to get into the heads of our clients or the brand of our commercial clients and bring out the best in those that are coming to us for our services. So I don't know. I think that potentially is a differentiator that our multidisciplinary skill set is being applied every step of the way.
What I like about our process is that there's no one right answer to architecture. So when we all have kind of the same prompt, we will all come with 4 different unique solutions to it. And so then when we work together, we can really find the best option rather than the Frankenstein method that I mentioned that I think a lot of people will kind of plug into ChatGPT and assume is the best option for their project. But I think when you have multiple minds coming together with their own unique ways of solving things, that's when you can get kind of the best parts of each of those ideas and make something that's really as strong as it can possibly be to achieve like the client's goals.
And Delaney, add to that we realize it, right? It's like, it's not just ideating. We're also brick and mortar gals. Like we will see it through construction at the same time.
I think we also, something that differentiates ourselves is that we care a lot about our clients. We care a lot about what we are designing and what we're building. And I don't think that stops when the design is over. That continues through construction. If we're walking through a construction site and we see a design possibility, then, we'll see that come to life because we can.
Okay, how awesome is it that the architects who have designed our projects are actually building it? Like it's an architect-led design build firm. So the design, like you're saying, doesn't stop when construction starts. I don't know, it comes back to my old motto, sexy but practical. I've said it before. How many builders can claim that?
She'll say it
That's
again.
how we do.
Suzanne, Marianne, and Delaney, thank you so much for doing this with me. I've learned a lot from our guests, our team, and putting each episode together. And thank you to everyone who listened, sent us questions, and followed along throughout the season. We really appreciate it, and we will see you in the next episode.